The year is 1999 and the fifth generation of gaming consoles are very much in their prime. Many incredible breakthroughs were made in this generation which have gone on to shape how games are both developed and played today. In this video we're going to explore what could possibly be the most important game to ever be played using a set of analog sticks. This is the big breakdown of Ape Escape. Ape Escape is a PlayStation game that was developed by a Japan studio and released in 1999 worldwide. It was the first game ever released that required an analog controller to play and for the player to take full advantage of the analog sticks. It was released in Japan, North America and Europe, and Japan studio had a different strategy for each of these three regions. As you just saw, there was a huge difference in the choice of design used for box art. There were also drastic changes made when naming characters, locations and levels depending on which region the game was being released in. For example, a lot of the characters in the North American version have completely different names to those in the European or Japanese versions. It wasn't uncommon for developers back then to make these sort of changes to suit the different regions, but as far as Ape Escape went, more changes than usual were made to fit the marketing strategies to their regional audiences. Now, Sony's huge marketing efforts may look a bit excessive, but actually, they really weren't. The gaming industry, particularly in the 90s, was very fragile. There were so many groundbreaking hardware developments made in the 90s created by big established corporations with huge budgets that completely flopped because the marketing wasn't done right. The DualShock Analog controller was released in 1997, and it's fair to say that it was a huge success. Having two sticks to work with became the norm for console games back then, and it still is today. So, 2 years later, Ape Escape was the game Sony developed to show off this revolutionary piece of hardware. How does it play out? The game opens with a cutscene showing a white monkey who has managed to find a strange helmet which has made him curious. He puts the helmet on his head and oh no, this doesn't look good. The monkey's name is Specter and he's the game's main antagonist. The helmet you just saw him put on his head is called the Peak Point or Pipo helmet, which has not only taken control of him, but also increased his intelligence by 300%. Another cutscene plays after the intro showing Spike and his friend running towards the professor's lab. Spike is the main protagonist in the game and the only character that the player will control. The other boy is called Jake or Buzz depending on your region and he's Spike's best friend. They're in a hurry because the professor has finished his new time station and they're really excited to test it out and travel through time. When they get to the lab, they find the professor and his granddaughter tied up, while Specter and his army of monkeys are taking control of the time station. The time station is activated, then Specter, along with his army, are transported back in time. Now, why is Specter doing this? Well, after putting on the helmet and increasing his intellect by 300%, he's decided to do what any self-respecting evil genius would do and take over the world. By sending the apes back in time, he plans to change the course of history to work in his favour. The professor explains to Spike that he's the only one who can stop Specter and he'll need to catch the monkeys and return them to the present time. The professor, whose name is Dr. Zeisel, is the scientist responsible for creating all of the gadgets that the player will use, as well as the helmet that Specter is wearing. His granddaughter is called Natalie or Katie and she assists him in the lab, as well as making sure all of the monkeys are caught. The first area Spike will explore is called the Lost Land or Prehistoric Era, and there are 3 levels here: Fossil Field, Primordial Ooze aka Raining Lake, and Molten Lava aka Dinosaur Valley. They work well as an introduction for the player and getting them used to the mechanics of the game. When the game begins, Spike is equipped with 2 gadgets, the main one being his time net, which he'll need to use to catch the monkeys with. The other gadget is the Stun Club. This is used to defeat enemies and stun monkeys if needed before catching them. Spike will also obtain the 3rd gadget in the Lost Land, which is called a Water Net. This is used to capture monkeys underwater, as well as giving Spike an optional speed boost when he's swimming. One notable puzzle in the Lost Land is on the 3rd level when Spike needs to catch this cheeky monkey riding on the T-Rex's tail. The T-Rex charges at Spike and smashes into the wall, which makes the monkey eventually fall off, leaving it vulnerable to catch. The next 3 stages are set in an area called Mysterious Age or Cenozoic Era. The levels here are called Thick Jungle, aka Jungle River, Dark Ruins, aka Why Here Ruins, and Cryptic Relics, aka Who Built This Ruin. The player begins with a message saying that they've acquired a new gadget called a Monkey Radar. This is used, as I imagine you've already worked out, to scope out hidden monkeys around the level. After training with it, a cutscene plays showing a video call between Specter, the Professor, and Natalie. Specter reveals his plans to go back in time to make apes the dominant species so he can take over the world. He then reveals that he's recruited and taken over Jake. The levels in Mysterious Age are themed with things one might expect to find in the jungle, as well as ancient-looking South American ruins. One notable new mechanic in this area is when Spike needs to row this boat across the water to avoid getting electrocuted. Rowing is done by rotating the analog sticks, and it can be a bit tricky to master at first. The player needs to rotate both at the same time if they wish to go in a straight line, and if they want to turn, they can do so by rotating either the left or right stick on its own. At the start of the final level on Mysterious Age, the player will receive a new gadget called a slingback shooter. This is a slingshot which can be used to hit enemies and switches from a distance. As well as regular projectiles, it can also fire homing and explosive projectiles, although both have limited ammo. Once Mysterious Age is complete, Spike will immediately be thrown into a race against Jake. The player doesn't need to win the race in order to progress the story, but if they do, they'll win 5 Specter coins, which is a collectible we'll talk about a bit later on. For now though, Spike has just entered the next area, which is called Oceania, or Primitive Age. This area has 3 levels, and they are called Krabby Beach, aka Primitive Beach, Coral Cave, aka Primitive Ocean, and Dexter's Island, which is a universal name and in fact an incredibly bizarre level. Spike enters Dexter's mouth and plays the level inside his body, which consists of many strange things, including these enemies which hang from the ceiling and swing to attack. Whilst in Oceania, the player will acquire the next gadget, which is called a Super Hoop. This is a hula hoop that for a short burst of time makes Spike invincible and gives him a speed boost. It's used to get to areas where the player is on a timer. The next area is called New Friesland or Ice Age, and the 3 levels here are called Snowy Mammoth, aka Frozen Ocean, Frosty Retreat, aka Icicle Cave, and Hot Springs, aka Monkey Hot Springs. One notable part of this area is when Spike has to push various polar bears into ice blocks so he can get to the next rooms. There's always an underlying fear that the polar bear is going to chase Spike, but it doesn't, it just goes back to sleep in the middle of the room. The gadget that the player acquires in New Friesland is called a Sky Flyer. This is a handheld propeller which allows Spike to glide and reach higher or further away platforms. It's very similar to the propeller in Ratchet & Clank, except in Ape Escape the player will need to continuously rotate the right analog stick if they want to keep the propeller going. Once New Friesland is complete, the player will race Jake again, except this time they will both need to use their Sky Flyers to get to the end. The next area is called Medieval Mayhem or Recent Past, and the 3 levels here are called Sushi Temple, aka Tranquil Temple, Wabi Sabi Wall, aka the Great Wall, and Crumbling Castle, aka Trick Castle. The first 2 levels here are based on traditional Japanese architecture and feature many items relating to Japanese culture. The last level is set in a European-style castle and is home to various puzzles. Spike makes his way to the end of the level and runs into Specter and, to his surprise, Jake, who is on Specter's side. He then enters a fight with the game's first boss, Specalizer. This giant knight uses an electrical charge to both attack and defend. Spike can only hit the knight when his charge is low, and he'll need to hit him a good few times before he falls. Before going back to the hub, a cutscene plays showing a number of monkeys breaking into the lab and kidnapping the Professor and Natalie. The next area is called Futurama, or Present Day, and the 3 levels here are called City Park, aka Urban City, Specter's Factory, aka Monkey Tool Factory, and TV Tower. Spike acquires the penultimate gadget, which is an RC car. This is a remote-controlled toy car which can access small spaces that Spike can't fit into. It can also be used to attack enemies and hold down switches that require constant pressure. As the Professor isn't around to present the gadget to Spike, Cassie, also known as Charu, fills the spot. She's an AI program that takes the form of a human female and is usually seen at the beginning of a level when the player is told how many monkeys they need to capture to complete it. The difficulty in Ape Escape increases significantly when the player reaches Futurama. The enemies here mean business, many of which are big robots equipped with heavy ammunition. Even the monkeys don't mess around anymore. This guy here, for example, has access to a huge mounted gun. A fun mechanic that the player is introduced to in Futurama is the tank. Tanks only appear in a couple of areas throughout these levels, and frankly they don't have the best lifespan, but they do prove to have their uses once the controls have been mastered. Despite the increase in difficulty, the levels here do have a generous amount of extra lives and health cookies scattered around. Spike eventually makes his way to Specter, who has the Professor and Natalie with him being held hostage. Specter orders Jake to take them away, leaving Spike to fight him in his airship. To defeat Specter, Spike needs to wait for the airship to finish a round of attacks, then hit this green spot when it appears. Rinse and repeat a few times, then the battle is won. After the fight, a cutscene plays with Specter praising Spike, saying that he's surprised he got this far. Specter then departs, telling Spike that he'll see him very soon. The next level is based in an amusement park called Specterland. It's by far the longest level in the game and serves as a run-up to the final showdown. Before Spike can make his way to Specter, he has to make everything right with the good guys first. To save Natalie, Spike will ride this roller coaster to a ghost house. Along the way, he'll need to jump over these barriers or face losing health. When he arrives, he'll make his way through the area whilst avoiding the spooky enemies along the way. Once all the monkeys have been captured in this area, Natalie's cage drops and she's then freed. She rather rudely tells Spike that she's going back to the lab, leaving him to save the other two on his own. The Professor is found in this circus-sized cage. To get to him, Spike needs to traverse the platforms around the edges of the cage to make his way to the top. Once at the top, he'll need to defeat this clown in a mini-boss fight, which involves knocking him off his ball, then finishing him off at the bottom inside the cage after. The Professor also goes back to the lab and tells Spike to go and find Specter. Next up, Spike enters the go-kart area where he encounters Jake, who is still being controlled by Specter. He uses explosive RC cars to attack Spike, as well as trying to run him over. Spike can attack by hitting the green button on the back of Jake's car when it appears. When Jake has been defeated, the spell breaks and his mind returns back to normal. He has no idea what happened or has any recollection of who Specter is. Just as the pair start celebrating, they're interrupted by Specter. He asks Spike to join him, but Spike flat out refuses. Not taking no for an answer, Specter asks Spike to meet him at his castle in the middle of the amusement park, to which Spike agrees. Jake wants to go as well, but he's too weak after being mind controlled, so Spike tells him to go back to the lab. When getting to the castle, Spike will need to use a mixture of gadgets to complete the various puzzles and challenges and make his way to the top. Once at the top, a cutscene plays showing Specter attempting to use his power to take control of Spike's mind. Through sheer determination though, Spike is able to repel Specter's power, sending him flying backwards. Specter then gets into a heavy-gunned machine and starts firing at Spike. Spike destroys the machine by slingshotting explosive projectiles at it whilst avoiding its attacks. Specter then gets into an even bigger machine that causes even more chaos, but Spike can defeat him once again by shooting the areas that turn green. The arms will be destroyed first, followed by the rest of the body. A cutscene plays with Spike telling Specter that he wants to return him to the amusement park, but Specter refuses, then disappears once again. The final level is called Peak Point Matrix, aka Final Get, and this is the final showdown between Spike and Specter. Specter is completely robotless in this fight, and the aim is to stun him, then eventually capture him so he can be returned to his owner in the amusement park. When Spike does eventually capture him, the credits roll with pictures of the kids returning Specter, without his helmet of course, to his owner. A cutscene then plays to confirm this, and that's the end of the story. Although the story has been completed, there's still a lot left to do if the player truly wants to complete the game. Now that Specter has been caught, the player receives the final gadget, which is called the Magic Punch. This is a giant boxing glove that kind of works like the stun club, except it's a lot stronger. The professor gives this to Spike because there are still loads of apes on the loose and he can use it when going back to get them. Speaking of apes, they come in a variety of forms and can be characterised by the colour of their shorts. Apes who wear yellow shorts are the most common. They're pretty standard, although some of them do wield weapons. Apes with light blue shorts are considered the easiest to catch. They have below average stats apart from their sense of alertness and are known to be very nervous and skittish. The apes with darker blue shorts are hard to catch. This is because they have the highest running stats, making them the fastest apes out the bunch. The most aggressive apes in the game are these two types. The apes with the black shorts attack Spike using a submachine gun, and the apes who wear the red shorts attack with a combination of machine guns, missiles and bombs. The final two types of ape wear either green or white shorts. The apes who wear green shorts have the best vision in the game and shoot missiles when they see Spike, whereas the apes in white shorts have the highest alert rate and throw bombs. There are apes who wear costumes rather than shorts. They fall into one of the categories just mentioned, although it's not made clear to the player which one at the time. The player can view the stats of all of the apes they've caught in the hub area, and as you can see, it turns out they all have names. This is another detail that the developers changed depending on which region the game was being released in. There are 204 apes to collect in total, and they all have different names in North America, Europe and Japan. Throughout the levels, the player can collect these items called Specter coins, and they're used to unlock the 3 mini-games available to play in the time station. The first game is called Ski Kids Racing, and the player will race against 4 opponents on a challenging course using rocket-powered skis. The second game is called Specter Boxing, and the player can choose their fighter, then enter them into a boxing match with another ape. The final mini-game is called Galaxy Monkey, and this is set in space and involves shooting enemies flying towards the player's spaceship. I think that just about sums up everything I want to tell you about Ape Escape. There's a ton of trivia associated with this game that would probably be a bit too much for this video, so I've left a link to the fandom wiki in the description below for anyone who wants to find out more. Thank you so much for watching. Please give the video a thumbs up if you enjoyed it, and please subscribe if you want to see more big breakdowns like this. We've got many more games and stories to go through. Thanks again, hopefully see you on the next video.